Welcome back, folks. I'm Briz, and today I'd like to take some time to talk about the lifeblood of every martial character in Pathfinder 2e. Weapons. There are an absurd amount of weapons in 2e, and it can honestly be pretty overwhelming to go through them to try and find out what is actually good. What makes a weapon actually useful depends a lot for different characters and classes, but there is still some commonalities to be found and for me to talk about. The first thing to immediately point out is that you can't really compare every weapon to every other weapon fairly. There are basically three categories of weapon that I think you can fairly compare: simple, martial, and advanced. These are just the proficiencies you need to be able to use them, and whenever Paizo makes a weapon, each category basically gets a different budget that can be spent on damage dice and traits. So comparing a simple weapon to a martial weapon just isn't fair for the simple weapon. Martial weapons just have objectively more stuff going on because they have a higher budget. Of course, the trade-off is that everybody is trained in simple weapons, only some are trained in martial weapons, and getting proficiency with advanced weapons can be a bit of an endeavor. Also, arguably, you could say that it's unfair to compare between finesse weapons and non-finesse weapons, because the finesse trait takes a fair amount of the budget. Damage dice are probably the most important part of every weapon, and unlike in other games, they're actually exceptionally relevant in Pathfinder 2e. In Pathfinder 1e, the dice of your weapon often got overshadowed by the flat bonuses to your damage rolls past level 5 or so. But in Pathfinder 2e, due to how striking runes and other abilities and feats add additional weapon damage dice instead of flat modifiers, damage dice have never been more important. Adding an extra d12 to damage is way more impactful than just adding an additional d4. This makes big weapons feel like absolute monsters whenever you roll damage, and that only gets more true the higher level you get. Naturally though, getting those large damage dice come with a couple of costs, because, everything's based on a budget. Weapons that have smaller damage dice, like d4s and d6s, often have way more traits when compared to larger weapons, because, the budget. For example, you're not going to be finding many weapons with large dice and the agile trait. That would be absolutely busted, so you're just not going to find it. There are some traits that you can only really see on bigger weapons, like reach, but in general, small weapons have more traits, and often they can get more out of those traits. Picking weapons isn't purely just about what is actually in a weapon's stat block, though. Different types of weapons are good for different classes. Some martial classes get a big boost to damage purely from their class features, while others don't. For rogues, the actual damage dice on weapons is a bit less important since sneak attack can provide lots of damage for them. So for them, getting an agile weapon could actually be worth giving up a higher basic damage dice, because if they can get off more sneak attacks in a round, then it doesn't quite matter as much the actual damage of the weapon they're using. For fighters though, who don't have a class feature that just increases damage, basic weapon damage dice are really important. So take your class into consideration whenever you're picking your weapon, because really, your class is honestly one of the most, if not the most important things whenever you're picking a weapon. There aren't really any objectively bad weapons in 2e, and I'm a firm believer that there is a use case for every single one of them. It might take a bit of looking to really find a way to use them optimally, but you can find a way to make them work. Weapons in 2e are lots of fun, and I'm a huge fan of the approach that Paizo took. Yeah, some traits like reach are just insanely powerful, but there isn't an objectively best weapon in the game, and I am absolutely here for it. Thanks for watching. Sorry if this is a little bit short or a little bit scatterbrained. I am completely and utterly exhausted. What do you think about weapons in 2e? Do you have any tips or questions regarding them? Let me know in a comment down below, and while you're down there, you can always consider subscribing or joining the channel as a member. But regardless, until I see you next, live a wonderful life.